The Patriots have an opportunity to correct years of mismanagement at this year's draft. That's where we start on this episode of Locked On Patriots.
You are Locked On Patriots, your daily New England Patriots podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Patriots fans? I'm your host, Nick Cattles, born and raised in New England, your New England Patriots expert, host of the Everything Pats podcast, co-host of the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast with Nick Cattles, and also a sports talk show host veteran. We'll dig into why Patriots fans seem more open to Will Campbell with the draft getting closer, and we look at a super aggressive draft strategy the Pats could deploy. But first, it's critical the Patriots learn from their prior draft mistakes. We appreciate you joining the show, making us your first listen, and for being an everydayer. The Locked On Patriots podcast is a proud partner of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Years of offensive line mismanagement helped lead the Patriots to two bad seasons in back-to-back years. Back-to-back 4-win seasons in 23 and 24, a total of 8 wins in the regular season, and you can go back. You can go back to the years of mismanagement on the offensive line as to one of the major reasons why we have seen such bad football the past couple of years. Whether it was Bill Belichick as the head coach or Gerard Mayo was the head coach, it didn't matter, because that offensive line just was not good enough. You can go through the Joe Thuney decision, the Shaq Mason decision, and the draft mismanagement, which we will get into a little bit deeper in just a minute. But all of those decisions or lack of decisions made about the offensive line led the Patriots to being one of the worst football teams in the entire NFL. And Mike Vrabel, during his introductory press conference, and pretty much everywhere that you could read, thanks to some leaks leading up to free agency, going past free agency, now as we get closer to the draft, pretty much everything was being said as far as we have to win in the trenches, building the football team from the inside out. And now the draft is pivotal. Free agency, for all intents and purposes, is over, and we focus on the draft and what the Patriots can do during this draft to help settle that offensive line, to help correct so many years of that mismanagement up front. Pro Football Focus, Ryan Smith, wrote about the offensive lines and building offensive lines right in the NFL. And here's what, in part, Smith wrote. The top offensive lines are built through the draft. When looking at Philadelphia, Detroit, and Tampa Bay's offensive lines, there is a clear trend among the three teams. They prioritize building through the draft. And he notes, each one of those three teams drafted 4 of their starters in 2024, using premium draft capital to do so. 8 first-round picks, 4 second-round picks among the 15 starters, while filling one missing piece through free agency. Each team had 1 free agent guard. We always talk about the NFL being a copycat league, and really any professional sports league is a copycat league. You look at what teams are contending and what they do right, what they do wrong. Is there a common theme between multiple contending teams? And the offensive line is a common theme in the NFL. To those contending teams, not only the offensive line talent, but how they got that talent. And I hope, and I'm sure many of you hope, that the Patriots, they've been taking notes and they understand it's a copycat league. And if you're going to be better at football, you need to do more on the offensive line, and you need to build through the draft. Look at this Patriots offensive line. Did the Patriots draft Morgan Moses? Nope. Did they draft Garrett Bradbury? Nope. Did they draft Vidarian Lowe? Nope. Now, of course, they drafted Micah Wenu. The only known starter right now, and even Vidarian Lowe is not a known starter, but the only known starter that the Patriots drafted for that offensive line is Micah Wenu. And we're talking about a lottery ticket pick for Big Mike. So there's a problem there. When you look at these contending teams, when you look at a team like Philadelphia and how they built that offensive line, the Patriots are antithetical when comparing them to Philadelphia. And here's one note I would also make when we talk about drafting for the offensive line and building it the right way. Don't just draft. Don't just draft late rounds. Don't just throw darts in the 6th round, 7th round, 5th round, even 4th round. If you want to look at contending teams and you want to see what works in the NFL, drafting offensive linemen works, and drafting those offensive linemen specifically at premium slots in the draft. Let's get back to Ryan Smith from Pro Football Focus. It's crucial to invest premium picks because the success rate in the later rounds is considerably lower than at other positions, especially early in their careers. Consider this. In the last 5 years, 68.7% of rookies drafted in rounds 1 through 3 played 500 snaps. 68.7%. And when you look at players that were drafted from round 4 through 7, that number drops from almost 69% to 15.5%. 37.5% of rookies drafted in rounds 1 through 3 played 1,000 plus snaps. 37.5%. When you drop it down to the 4th through 7th rounds, that number is 5.7%. 43.9% of the 66 rookies who played 500 plus snaps graded higher than a 65 if they were drafted in rounds 1 through 3. Rounds 4 through 7, 31.5%. So drafting offensive linemen in premium slots means that they're going to play more snaps and they're going to be more effective during those snaps, is the gist of those numbers I just gave you. And you look at the Patriots. The Patriots have drafted 2 offensive tackles in rounds 1 through 3 since they drafted Isaiah Wynn in 2018 in the 1st round. Yadni Kajust and Caden Wallace. Those are the only 2 tackles the Patriots have invested in rounds 1 through 3 since 2018. Pro Football Focus writes, there have been 32 tackles drafted in rounds 1 through 3 since 2020 that played 500 plus snaps, 18 graded higher than 65, which is 56.2%. When you look at rounds 4 through 7, there have been 8 tackles that have been taken in those rounds or undrafted that played 500 plus snaps. 50% of them graded higher than a 65. Most guys simply can't get on the field early. If you're drafting somebody in the 4th through the 7th round, only 8 of those guys since 2020 that have been drafted in those rounds that played 500 plus snaps graded higher than 65. You got 32 tackles drafted in rounds 1 through 3 that played 500 plus snaps. The numbers add up. If you keep drafting offensive linemen in rounds 4 through 7, expecting them to be starters, expecting them to be foundational pieces, you're fishing in the wrong pond. You've got to go somewhere else. You've got to go to rounds 1 through 3 if you want your best chance of drafting somebody who is going to bring stability. And there is no more critical time to get this done than right now. Drake May walking into year 2, you don't want another year of shoddy protection in front of Drake May. You want him to take a step in the right direction in year 2. You want him to improve, show that development. What's going to help him is an offensive line that is worth something. Build it right. Follow through with all the trench talk from Mike Vrabel. Build it right. Invest premium picks in offensive linemen. Something you haven't done in 7 years. It's time to change. If it ain't working, you got to change it. Back-to-back 4-win seasons tells me it ain't working. All right, the past we just discussed is starting to impact fans' psyche as this year's draft draws closer. That's coming up next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start budgeting wealth. Sounds good, doesn't it? Budgeting wealth. When I started using Monarch, like other people, I realized, just how much I was spending on food delivery now. You can budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Easy for you. Easy managing money with your partner, smoother than ever. Smoother. Can you imagine managing your money with your partner being smoother than ever? Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. This is completely unscientific, I warn you. Completely unscientific. I tweeted this out the other day. If you want to follow me at Nick C Radio. But it seems to me, it feels, this is a feels thing. This is a vibes thing. It feels to me that more Patriots fans are accepting of Will Campbell being drafted at 4 now more than ever. Certainly now more than 2-3 weeks ago. If I brought up drafting Will Campbell at number 4 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think a lot of Patriots fans would have been disappointed. They would have been, some, disgusted. But as we get closer to the draft, Will Campbell doesn't seem like the turd in the punch bowl anymore, so to speak. Now, why is that? And when I tweeted that out, I had a lot of people confirm that. Yeah, as the draft gets closer, Nick, I do feel like Will Campbell is a better option than 4 than I might have realized or wanted him to be going back 2-3 weeks ago, a month ago. But why is that happening? First, I think it's the cold reality that one of Hunter or Carter falling to you at number 4 seems less and less likely by the day. Those dreams of Abdul Carter, the dreams of Travis Hunter falling in your lap, they're fading. They're fading away. We talked about it on yesterday's podcast with Carter. Very unlikely he falls to you. The ESPN draft simulator has it at 31%. I think it's even less likely than 31%. The hope of the Carter Hunter draft pick is fading. A new reality has set in. And that new reality is Will Campbell is going to be sitting there at number 4. And really, he has as many questions, if not less questions about who he is and what he does than the other guys who are going to be left there at 4. I think that's sinking in. I think people are realizing that every single one of these players in the top 10, top 12, every single one of them has questions, even Hunter and Carter. Now, I think Travis Hunter is the safest pick when you look at ceiling and whether or not he can hit that ceiling, his leadership, his character, his on-field acumen, what he did at Colorado, playing both sides of the football. But that's the question. How much did that take from him? He's got excellent conditioning and work ethic, but eventually it's a lot of snaps. It's a lot of football at a high level. And we've gone through the Carter red flags already. And you look at these other guys, Cam Ward, he's ranked on many of these top 100 lists somewhere between 10 and 15. He's not ranked as the number 1 guy in this draft, just looking at it from a talent standpoint. And there's always questions about quarterbacks getting drafted coming into the league. Always. Will Campbell, we've gone through it. The arm length. Mason Graham is the size thing. Tyler Warren, some might say Tyler Warren is a safe guy. He's a clean prospect. He's going to be 23. Has he already hit his ceiling? Now, it could be fine. I'm not saying these guys are all going to fail. And I'm not saying these guys can't work out. There are plenty of players that have questions. There's questions every year about players. But there's plenty of players that grind through those questions, and we find out that they're legitimate NFL players and that they have that kind of talent. So I'm not saying this draft is a waste. It's not a waste. But when we're talking about top-tier talent at the number 4 pick, the guys that you're looking at number 4 have more questions this year than in prior years. I'll keep it simple. Think about Joe Alt. Joe Alt, no question. No question he was going to be a top-notch tackle in the NFL. There was absolutely zero question about that. That's the type of guy that you could have gotten at 4 last year if you were looking for offensive line help instead of having to draft your franchise quarterback. There's just so many questions. Jalen Walker, is he a tweener? Tet McMillan, speed, separation, lack thereof. We can go through everybody. Nick Ashton Genty is a clean prospect. He had over 800 touches last year at Boise State. He's 5'8". You look at positional value. Everybody has questions, and I think the more we realize that players in the top 10 of this year's draft have more significant questions than players in the top 10 in prior drafts, the more we realize that, the more people get settled on Will Campbell because, yeah, you know what? He's got the measurement questions. He's got the length questions. But everything else, he checks all those boxes. And a trade is unlikely. The trade, I think, is the last hope for many Patriots fans. And I would love a trade down a few slots and then draft somebody. I would love that, pick up extra draft capital. But that seems less likely by the day as well. And we'll see how that can change. We talked about it yesterday's podcast. Maybe Derek Carr's injury has changed the math a little bit. But even as I said yesterday, it's unlikely. We can talk about these possibilities because there are chances they can happen. But it's not like it's a probable scenario to play out. So as we get closer to the draft and we start to realize what the most likely reality is, you start looking at Will Campbell and you say to yourself, his questions aren't as bad as the other guy's questions. There's also just frustration. We talked about it in the first segment just a few moments ago. There's frustration. I'm frustrated. You're frustrated. Everybody's frustrated that the Patriots just have not been able to address the left tackle problem they've had. And it's been a mess. Trent Brown had a good year or two mixed in at some point, but he was up and down towards the end. Isaiah Wynn was supposed to be the future. He ended up being a guard years down the road. We see what they've been trying to put together over the past couple of off seasons, drafting Caden Wallace last year, believing he might be able to swing to the left side. Never even really got an opportunity to do that much last year and then got injured. And people are just frustrated. Like, hey, can we just solve this one problem? Can you get a left tackle that matters? Can you get a guy that can play that position? Please, for the love that is all holy on earth, can you do that? And really, an above average left tackle is better than a mid to late round dart throw. So you might not believe that Will Campbell is going to be an elite left tackle. But if you believe that Will Campbell has the ability to be an above average left tackle, and you compare that to the scenario of throwing a dart at somebody like Caden Wallace in this year's draft, you're going to lean towards the above average left tackle. You'd rather take above average play at that spot than take another swing and another risk. I also believe people just trust Mike Vrabel that he's going to understand what needs to get done. They're going to trust Mike Vrabel that he's going to draft the right guy and that he's going to draft the left tackle of the future. That's mostly just trust in Vrabel with not much evidence. He did not draft Taylor Lewan. He drafted Peter Skoronski, and Tennessee quickly moved him to guard. But there is this inherent trust of Mike Vrabel that he's going to do right by this team. He's going to draft the right guy. And even if somebody's not super thrilled with the pick, they're going to put their trust in Vrabel. There's another part of this, is that if you pass on Will Campbell at number 4, this is very similar to the conversation about Drake May last year. And the closer that you get to the draft, and the more you realize that if you don't draft at that position, when you have a chance, when you have the quote-unquote bird in hand, if you don't take advantage of that opportunity, even if you think Campbell is going to be just above average, not very good, not great, above average, you have the opportunity to draft him. You have the opportunity to address that problem at 4 and then move on with your life. Because if you don't get Campbell at 4, or even if you draft Armand Membu, but for this conversation, it's Campbell. If you draft Campbell at 4, that's what you're rolling with, baby. That's going to be your left tackle for 2025. But at least you got him. Because if you pass up the tackle at number 4, there is no guarantee that your left tackle in 2025 is not going to be Vidarian Lowe. Because we could talk about all the other scenarios, but you got to trade back in. You need certain guys to fall to you. And then if you've got guys falling to you, does that mean you should be drafting them and banking on them? Are they less of a sure thing because they fell to 38? And there's just more pundits and analysts and sources talking. And the closer you get to the draft, the more information that you gather. That's why I don't do mock drafts and tell you who I would pick until the week of the draft, because I'm gathering intel, I'm gathering info, I'm watching videos, I'm doing all of these things. And the more positive that you read about Will Campbell from personnel, executives, and front office people and coaches, the majority of the people that I'm reading, that I'm listening to, that I'm watching, they're telling me that Will Campbell can play left tackle. So there's this renewed embrace of Will Campbell being the pick at 4. But the Patriots might not stop drafting for the O-line at number 4. We'll look at an aggressive draft scenario next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The NBA playoffs are here. They start this week. Celtics play on Sunday. That's right. And FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into those player props. I love player props. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. You're watching the game, you feel good. Maybe Tatum's, over on his points. He's over on his assists. Well, guess what? Now you can combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay and win even more money. I have won money multiple times using the same-game parlay. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. The Patriots can decisively and swiftly address the offensive line mess that we had talked about earlier in this podcast during this draft. It's called the old double dip. Ah, yeah. See, you don't double dip chips. You shouldn't double dip chips. But maybe you double dip in this draft on the offensive line. And not only do you double dip, but you double dip early. Maybe you double dip in the first and second round. Let's talk about that scenario. Mike Reese at ESPN.com wrote, "It would hardly be a surprise if the Patriots double or triple dip." Oh, the old triple dip or triple dip in the draft along the offensive line. Draft analysts caution that the top starting caliber tackle options will be long gone by 38. It all sets up one of the more compelling draft-based questions for the Patriots. In their quest to support May, how do they best strategize to bolster the offensive line? Rule number 1, don't go offensive line crazy due to desperation. Just don't. As badly as you want to draft 2-3 offensive linemen in the first 3 or 4, don't draft out of desperation. Because if you go offensive line bananas because you're desperate, you're going to mess up. Because when you have desperation, you start reaching. And when you reach, you make mistakes. And what this team cannot allow to happen is to make mistakes in this draft. Now, maybe one you can write off, but you can't make a mistake in the first 2 rounds. You have to hit and hit. I don't care if they're 2 doubles. I'll take 2 doubles. Of course, at number 4, I would love a triple or a home run. But if you told me that you hit a couple of doubles to start this draft, this particular draft with all the question marks we mentioned last segment, if you tell me you hit a double the first couple picks, I'd take that. But when you start reaching and you start making those mistakes, that's when regret comes in. And you just don't want to chase the bad money. You don't want to be out of desperation drafting offensive linemen that should not be drafted where you drafted them. And then you get to camp and you realize, well, that's why they should not have been drafted where we drafted them. We had that guy graded as a 3rd-round pick, but we picked him in the 2nd round because we felt the urgency to do something because we had to, quote unquote, do something. If you spend a pick in the 2nd round on an offensive lineman and you reach to do so, you're allowing other quality football players to go by the board. And that's not ideal. This draft is deep. This draft is deep in certain positions. This draft is deep at defensive end. You can find a very good edge prospect at 38. You could find a top 3 tight end prospect at 38. If you love running back, if you think they need a running back, we know we've talked about it, and we know that Mike Vrabel said it at the owners' meetings that they're looking to draft a running back. We know Robert Kraft came out and said they need a speed running back. Certainly seems like they're going to address running back at some point during this draft. At 38, you could get the 3rd or 4th best running back on the board in a very deep class. You could do that. You could find different positions. That'll help you. Wide receiver. You could find a wide receiver at 38. Jalen Noel is maybe going to be there, likely going to be there. Jaden Higgins is another name that people have brought up. I think Ibuka is gone by then. I think Golden is gone by then. Travis Hunter is obviously gone by then. Tet McMillan, I think, is gone by then. But you look at these other players. Maybe you're a big fan of Luther Burden, the 3rd. So don't reach at 38 because you feel this urgency out of desperation that you've got to draft an offensive lineman. There are going to be quality football players that could fill holes for you and help you for the next 5 to 8 years sitting there at number 38. Don't stiff arm those dudes to go to some other cat that you're not totally sold on. So don't go the desperation route. However, if your board tells you left tackle at 4 and left guard at 38 makes sense, then you absolutely entertain the double dip. I've got no issue with the double dip. If you're drafting 2 guys that deserve to be drafted where they're being drafted, if you're not reaching. So let's look at Dane Brugler from The Athletic. He released his beast last week, and here are his offensive guard rankings. Now, we have no idea where these guys are going to be picked, obviously. These are just Dane Brugler's rankings. But you've got guard number 1, Tyler Booker at 24. Then you've got Kelvin Banks at 26 overall. Now, it's interesting. Some people think that Banks can be a tackle. Brugler has him ranked as a guard. If you're wondering, Brugler has Campbell as a tackle. So you've got Booker at 24, Banks at 26. Then you've got everybody's favorite interior offensive lineman since the Senior Bowl, which is Gray Zabel at number 32. And then you've got Donovan Jackson, interesting prospect from The Ohio State, because he played guard at Ohio State at a high level, and then he got switched to left tackle when Josh Simmons had the torn patella tendon. So he's interesting because he's played both positions. Jackson is ranked 48th overall. He is the 4th ranked guard, according to Dane Brugler. The Donovan Jackson versatility is very interesting. It's compelling. It's intriguing because if you could draft somebody like that, then you have some versatility. Say you draft, just hypothetically speaking, don't lose your mind. Say if you draft Will Campbell and then you draft Donovan Jackson. You got Will Campbell at left tackle. You've got Jackson at left guard. Now, if Campbell in the next 2 or 3 years shows himself more as a guard, well, you've got Jackson. And Jackson can take snaps at left tackle during camp. He can take snaps at left tackle through his first year or two because he played that at college when Simmons went down. And so now you have that versatility between both Campbell and Jackson. So you just got to hope that one of those guys ends up being an above average left tackle and the other guy ends up being a really good guard. Then the left side of your offensive line is settled for the next decade. Not too shabby. So if your board tells you that it's reasonable to draft tackle, guard at 4 and 38 respectively, then by all means, go O-line, and get rid of the problems that this football team has had up front for the number of years it's had them. Enough is enough. Now, I don't think the Patriots would deal significant capital to move up into the first round to draft the guard. I don't see that happening because you could argue if you set a left tackle, I've said this multiple times, whether it's on the Everything Pats podcast I do on YouTube Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, or it's on this podcast Monday through Friday. I've said this plenty of times. You might be okay. I don't think it's crazy to believe that you could be okay walking into camp. If you set a left tackle, I don't think it's nuts to believe you could be okay with one of the three guys that are on the roster right now that have a shot at left guard. I don't think it's crazy to believe that one of those three guys could be good enough to allow you to play good football in 2025 without overindulging on the O-line because you went nuts and moved up to draft a guard when you've got Sidney So, Layden Robinson, and Cole Strange. I do think those guys give you some insurance. Questions about pretty much all of them, but I don't think it's a desperate situation. All right, that wraps up this edition of Locked On Patriots. Tomorrow on the show, more draft talk for sure. Let me know your thoughts on today's topics. Reach out to me on Twitter at NickCRadio. And don't forget to throw a comment in on the YouTube channel. Thank you for making Locked On Patriots your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every single day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.